In this video, we'll learn how to create a book listing app with REST API callout. So the API that we're going to use for books is Google API, and that is an external source. So to call that external source, we're going to use a fetch API here in our component, and this connection will be a totally direct connection to an external source without writing a single line of Apex. So let's go to our VS Code and start building this app. So now I'm in my VS Code. So let's create a component. Let's give some name to the component, book app. So the component is ready. So the first step to the component is to write the URL that we're gonna use. So we'll say const book URL equal to https www.googleapis.com/books, and the API version is v1, and we are calling the volumes of the book, and here we're gonna pass the query dynamically. And now to call this URL, we have to understand the fetch API, and to understand that, let's go to a Google and search for a JavaScript editor that is online. So just type run JS online and select first link, that is playcode.io. Click on open editor and clean whatever is there inside the script.js. So here we're gonna write our code. So let's understand the fetch API. So fetch API provides an interface for fetching the resources, and this is the native feature of JavaScript. So you don't need to import or include any third-party library to fetch the external source or API. So let's look into the syntax. So fetch is the keyword. It will take the URL, then other parameter. So if you are calling the get call, basically get method, so you don't need to provide any method, but I'm giving you a generic signature. So here we'll pass the method get post put. Then the second thing you can pass is the headers based on your requirement. Then we can pass the body if it is a post call. So the data we can pass here. So this is the basic syntax, and this method return a promise, and that promise we can catch with the then. And here the thing to observe is the response you get is not a JSON. So we need to convert this object into a JSON using the JSON method, response.json, because here the response is an object with a series of method, and this method can be text if you want to convert into the text. This method can be blob if you want to convert into the blob format, and we want this method to object to convert into the JSON, so we are converting into JSON, and then it return it again. And we already know in JavaScript, if then return something, it is another promise. So to catch that promise, we're gonna use data, and we'll say console.log data, and if it hits the API, it will return the data. And to handle the error, we're gonna use catch, and if error comes, we'll console.error error. So this is the full syntax of fetch API. And here the things to observe is, like, we don't have any post call, so we are just calling the Google API of books to get the book details. So I'll just remove the second object here, and we need to pass our URL. So let's go and copy the URL that we have typed, and come back and pass the URL here. Now right now it's returning error because the query is missing. We haven't passed the query here. and we'll say mark. If we passing the mark, it will return the data. It says the total item is 226. As this is a free API or the free version of the API, so it returns only the 10 items at a time out of 226 that he found. So if we look into the object that is coming, it gives us the volume information, sales information, access information, search information. And if you open the volume info, we'll get the title, author, publisher, date, description, and so many things. So we're gonna use this fetch API in our component to fetch the detail of the books. So what I want is I want to call this API on the load of the component, and we already know to call something on the load, we have to use a connected callback lifecycle hook, and I'll say this dot fetch book data is a method, and outside this I'm gonna create this method fetch book data, and here I'll paste this whatever we have written there, the fetch. And I want this mark to be dynamic, so I'll search and I'll create a property here that is search key, and we can say this as a man. I want on the load it search the book that has the man as a keyword, and I'll pass this here as a search key. Because we already have the URL on the top because it's a constant URL, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass the book URL here, and we want to append the search query basically. So we'll change it to query, and we'll say this dot query and bring the result. And once the query is passed, it brings the data here, and we will store the data into a property. We'll create a property called books, and we'll say this dot books equal to data, and let's keep it as it is for time being. And we'll go to our HTML and just create the card component, and we'll close the card. We'll say some padding class, so slds padding around medium, and the padding will be here. Book details will come here, and let's deploy this. And before deploying, what we're gonna do is we'll add some targets and change is exposed to true, and let's close the targets, and we're gonna place this component into the app page, so we are setting the target as app page. Let's deploy this. So now the component is deployed. I already created a page books listing app in our app 0 to hero in LWC. So let's edit the page, and let's place this component to our page, and let's search for our component name, that is book app, and let's drag that to a main page and hit save. And let's go back, and now you can see the card is coming, the book details will come here. We haven't given any heading because we already have a main heading here, so I just ignore the heading of the lightning card. Let's check the console, right click and select inspect, and we are getting an error while calling the REST API, and the error is refused to connect because we are connecting from the Salesforce domain to a third-party domain that is a Google API, and it's throwing us a CSP error, that is content security policy. So it says Salesforce should allow me to connect. So let's configure the CSP. So let's go to the gear icon, select setup, and we'll configure the CSP in our org. So I'll say CSP, and it will show us CSP trusted sites. We'll select this and we'll select new trusted site, and I'll go to the URL and just copy the URL .googleapi.com, and I paste the trusted URL. Site URL is star.googleapi.com. Star means whatever, it can be in the front, it can start with the HTTPS or it can start with www, but the main domain should be googleapis.com. And I'll say trusted site is Google API, and we'll allow all the checkboxes. It should allow us to bring the images, media, source, everything from this domain. So hit save and just wait for 1 minute and refresh the page, because sometimes it takes time to get the access. So let's open the console and refresh the page. So just refresh couple of times because it takes some time to configure. So for me it took 2 minutes, but after 2 minutes it gets configured. Now you can see it is giving me the data. So data is coming in the item, 10 records are coming, and we're gonna place this item or this book card on the screen now. So let's go to our code and let's start designing it here. So we're gonna use the lightning layout, and we'll say lightning layout, and it should allow multiple rows. So this is the way to design the layout in the lightning web component. And here we're gonna say check first if the books are available or not. If books are available, then create the card. And to create the card, what we're gonna do is we're gonna run the loop, because we are getting the 10 books at a time. And we'll say books dot items, because we already seen here the data is coming under the items. We'll say books dot items, and for item we're gonna call it as book. And let's design this. We'll say under this use lightning layout item, and the each item means the each card should have the size 3. Padding we want around the card, so we'll say padding around of size small, that is 8 pixel. And if, because we are using the for each loop, so the key will be book dot id, and we know the id is coming. And if you want to confirm that, you can go and open an object and you can see id is there for each object. And within this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a card, and for that we can say div class slds box, and we want to add some padding around the box of size medium. And let's close this div. And now inside this we want first the image to come. We're gonna use image tag source. We'll close this. After this we want some heading. Heading should come here, and we want the heading to be a little bit bolder, so we'll say and little bit bigger. So we're gonna use slds text heading class of small, and we can pass some, we can wrap the text in the strong tag that will give some boldness to our text. And I can close this out. Now after this I want to show a publish date, and below this I want to show average rating. So we'll say average rating, and here I'll say published date. And now we have to map the data dynamically, right? So first we need to check from where we can get the source image source. So under the object we have a volume info. We'll say volume info dot image link dot small thumbnails. So we'll say book is an object. Under that there is a volume info. Under that we have a image links, and under that we have a small thumbnail. And I want my image to be of a static height, so I'll say height equal to 200 pixel. There should be a space between source and the height. And apart from that, I want my title to be dynamic. So the title we will get from book info dot title. Just confirm that under the book info we have a title T small. So I'll say title. And for publish date, we're gonna use book info dot volume info, and we'll say publish date. And for rating, we'll go and check the data again and see there is a rating. Average rating is there. Come back and say average rating, and book is coming, and we are running the loop on the books. If I go to a JS file, we are storing that books data into the books. So let's deploy and see whether it creates the card on the screen or not. Now it's deployed. Let's go to the app, refresh the page. And now we can see that we are getting the card, we are getting the images. And if I zoom out a little bit, now you can see 4 cards are coming, and I want the cards and the text to be center aligned. So what I'm gonna do, I'll add some more classes here, HTML, and I'll say SLDS text align center, SLDS text align center, so it will align the whole text. And to the heading I can add another class, that is padding, so that it not touch the image as well as the published date. So I'll say SLDS heading vertical of medium size, and let's deploy this. So as soon as the page load, it passes the query man and it brings the books with the name man. So let's go and see here. Is the book title has man. If you look into this, the book names, let's refresh the page. It's deployed, and let's refresh. And now if you look, you can see the 4 cards are aligned very cleanly. The details are coming perfectly fine, and be able to list the data. Now what I want is, I want to create a text field on the top, and on search of that I want to call the new books, so that we able to search the books based on the tag. So let's go and create the search box here. And for search box we need a lightning input. So I'll say I'll create another class here first, and I'll say SLDS padding around medium, and I'll create a lightning input. I'll say type equal to search, and after that I want to call on change fetch book. Fetch books I'm gonna call, and I'll say the label search books, and we'll say value equal to search key, that is query in this case actually. So now we have an input field that gonna call the fetch books. We'll give the more generic name fetch books handler. I'll say fetch book handler. Whatever we type here, it will come in the form of event, and we'll update our query. This dot query equal to event dot target dot value, and we want to call this fetch data. But what I want is this fetch data gets called up after some delay because we type very fast. So for each keyword, I don't want to call the fetch book data. So I'll use a set timeout here, and I'll say call fetch book data after every 1 second. I'll create another property here, timer, and I'll store this timer reference here. And what I'm gonna do here is I'll say, suppose I typed A B C, so 3 times I press the key 3 times, this method gets called up. What I want is if you press something before 1 second, this cancel this timeout and register it again. So for cancelling it, I'm gonna use window dot clear timeout and pass the reference, that is this dot timer, and this technique we called it debouncing. So this is a performance efficient technique for searching. Always whenever you have search requirement in your project, always use this technique. This will reduce the server call basically. And we call this, and let's refresh, let's deploy and refresh the page. So it's deployed, refreshing the page, and now the search box is coming on the top. We have the cards here, man is already selected, and if I say I'll remove the man and I'll type Harry, now it immediately refreshes the card and it brings the data for the Harry. If I zoom it little bit for you, I have typed Harry and it brings the data for the Harry. So based on the data, you can design in any way. Based on different techniques, you can improve this app basically, but our main agenda for this app is to understand how we can connect the third-party API or REST API from the external source without writing an Apex. And we have learned the fetch API, we have designed the layout, we have learned the debouncing technique of searching. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.